Genndy Tartakovsky is a creator whose works have been part of my life for as long as I can remember. Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, The Clone Wars as a kid, Symbionic Titan down the line, and in recent years, Samurai Jack's final season and Primal. Those last two boosting his profile into a more adult audience, making Genndy probably the biggest name in Western animation. Naturally then, there was a lot of excitement around his new series, Unicorn Warriors Eternal, a genre-blending story-led steampunk fantasy action show following three immortal warriors reincarnated across the centuries to protect the world from evil. The show itself is set in a fully steampunked London during the 1890s, where once again the heroes are called upon to defend the planet.
The evil will return, and so must you.
Yes, I see it.
Your souls will protect the world throughout eternity.
Copernicus, a magical robot storing their souls, scours the city for new host bodies, imbuing street magician Dimitri Dynamo with the soul of the elven Prince Edred, young orphan Alfie with the cosmic monk Seng, and, on her wedding day, Emma Fairfax with Merlin's magical daughter, Melinda. Now, I came into this series with a lot of anticipation. Like I said, Genndy's a huge name in animation, and I've been a fan for most of my life. But even this early into Unicorn's first episode, some things just weren't sitting right with me. The setup was pretty bland. Something about these three seemingly random fantasy characters being the only ones who can save the world, despite the obvious implications of entire magical civilizations existing, did seem a little bit contrived, as did the incredibly vague one-size-fits-all evil entity. But this was only episode 1, so not disastrous at this stage, but equally not really doing anything for me. The heroes possessing random civilians' bodies raised another question mark, and while the story definitely doesn't gloss over the moral implication of using somebody's body without their consent, it also doesn't address the issue particularly well either. I guess this is a point where we're going to be getting into spoilers, but Emma spends most of the show battling internally between these two souls now occupying her body, Emma and Melinda, as she shares the memories of both and slips between their two personalities from time to time.
Who are you? What is happening?
This leaves her parents scared and confused that their daughter has vanished, as well as her fiancé Winston risking his life to try and rescue her. The show knows this possession plot point is sketchy as it's central to Emma's storyline, but at the same time it tries to downplay things by saying that because Emma will eventually get her body back once the evil is defeated, it's alright, which doesn't actually address the ethics of snatching someone's body against their will. Just because it's temporary doesn't mean it's okay, especially in the case of Alfie, whose body physically ages 24 years over the show, and the story doesn't question that at all before lazily resetting his age after the final fight. Presumably because Emma is the only character of the three who's allowed to get any focus, despite Alfie and Dimitri being forced into the exact same situation that she is. Another issue with this possession setup is that it inherently creates characters who are disconnected from their surroundings. Despite all the detail going into making steampunk London a vibrant living setting, the main trio have no attachment to the place because they're all supernatural godlike immortals. And in Seng's case, it's particularly bad because he's less interesting than the normie he possessed. In Alfie's episode, we learn how he was a football prodigy being cared for at an orphanage, but he and his friends were left to fend for themselves once that orphanage closed down, and have survived by forming a gang that look out for each other.
I heard the school is getting shut down.
Right. This place looks abandoned.
You're right about that. We've been left out here on our own for years now.
You can clearly see the setup of a character abandoned by society, distrustful of the outside world, and who had opportunities taken away from him through no fault of his own. But the second he becomes Seng, it all gets dropped. Alfie's personality and backstory are completely erased for the rest of the season, and is replaced by Seng, who basically has no character at all. Seng's cosmic powers are too much for a child's mind to handle, so for the rest of the season he's just cosmically high. He spends the majority of the show floating around and spouting the occasional lol so random, which is just a massive downgrade from the character Alfie could have been. In Dimitri's case, it's less egregious because we learn nothing about him before he's possessed, but there's a decent chance he could have been a more interesting character than a sulky blue twink whose dialogue is mostly just him shouting Melinda's name.
Melinda! You are Melinda. Melinda! We have to find Melinda. Melinda! 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 Find Melinda! 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 Melinda, wait! Melinda! Melinda! Melinda!
He's got big Finn from episode 9 energy.
Melinda! 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 It's Ray. Melinda. Melinda!
Now, on the visuals, the animation, the movements, the fluidity on Unicorn is brilliant. Studio like Hachette bring top-notch animation every time, so there's no concerns there, but what has been more divisive is the character design. Unicorn is clearly influenced by early Western and Japanese animators like Max Fleischer and Osamu Tezuka, which gives the show a unique look, even if it seems a bit odd for a serialized action show with a somewhat dark tone. Genndy deliberately designed the characters that way as a kick back against the industry notion that if a show looks too cartoony, then the audience won't take it seriously. And this has been divisive. A lot of people love how Unicorn looks and think that Genndy proved his point, whereas others, and I've got to admit myself included, really don't think that the art style of this show works at all. And I respect Genndy for experimenting with an old visual style in a more modern adult story, but at the same time, isn't part of the point of character design to reflect the genre appropriately? Admittedly, this is me trying to intellectualize a gut reaction of not liking how the characters look, but the reason why I don't think it works is, even as an homage to classic cartoon visuals, this kind of art style was never designed for serious storytelling. As contrast, the Cuphead show totally embraces the silliness of the rubber hose era and doesn't try to make it something that it's not. Cuphead is largely a comedy, as were the old cartoons it's referencing, so nothing really feels out of place. Unicorn is a serious action show, and if you look back at the time period it's visually referencing, it's not like Fleischer Studios weren't making action cartoons. The 1940s Fleischer Superman shorts are some of the most celebrated animations from that period, and they don't look anything like Betty Boop or Popeye. So if they knew back then that these designs work for comedy and these designs work for action, I'm not really sure the homage works if you're just lifting the visual style but not understanding how they applied it. On the one hand, yes, Genndy is making all these visual callbacks to classic cartoons for animation fans to nerd out over, and creating something new by blending it with steampunk and fantasy elements, but on the other hand, really does look like he just saw one episode of Drawn Together and was like, that's it, that is my entire aesthetic now. So I don't like the premise, the visuals, or the characters, so not a great run so far. The last thing I probably needed was pacing issues, and oh my god does this show have pacing issues. Random plot points that change the entire trajectory of the story will just come out of left field. New important characters will suddenly appear without any explanation, or vanish without any fanfare. The story refuses to give you any tenable grasp on what the hero's objectives are or how they plan to achieve them beyond the entire world is at stake for some reason and they need to stop that. Unicorn's story gives that weird mix of being too fast-paced while having entire episodes that feel like nothing's happening.
Ew. What was it we were looking for?
And given how over the top the visuals are, it really could have done with having a more straightforward journey, like Primal or Samurai Jack, that's given more breathing room, so that it doesn't feel like sensory overload so often. As for things that did work, as mentioned, the animation is top notch, and the story can work when it gives its heroes more flesh on the bone. The episode where Emma goes back to see Melinda's origins and Edred revisiting his family and kingdom, incredibly rushed ending aside, were pretty good, and I actually thought the show handled its love triangle really well. Given the whole body snatch premise, a character inhabiting someone already in a relationship and causing a love triangle is a reasonable and realistic outcome to this incredibly unreasonable and unrealistic scenario. And from that, I really liked Winston. I was certain he was either going to be a joke character or die or turn out to be some slimy arsehole, but to the show's credit, he was genuinely just a really great guy.
What are you doing here?
I've been searching for you since you left our wedding. We have to get you out of here. I don't know what is going on, but it is not safe.
All he's motivated by is looking out for Emma's welfare, and by the end of the series, after becoming a werewolf, don't ask, he joins the team and can hold his own. All that without wiping his entire personality or pre-existing relationships. Imagine. So yeah, overall, not really feeling this one, which is a surprise given that I've enjoyed pretty much everything else Tartakovsky's made. I also have to acknowledge that this video is impressively late, so I'm not really sure who it's for at this point. This show aired months ago, but the buzz around it has been so small that I didn't even realise it had aired until I checked a few weeks back. If you're still here, I probably should ask you to like and subscribe, but instead I'm going to tell you about the nitpick on this show that made me irrationally angry, and that was Merlin using the exclamation Odin's beard.
Odin's beard, Odin's eye, Odin's beard.
Merlin is a character of Brythonic mythology, not Norse. There is no reason for him to invoke the name of a Norse god. Anyway, thanks for watching. I don't know what the next video is going to be about, but I'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.